control.
Welcome to the U.S. House District 1 Democratic Candidate Forum with Kevin Jenkins and Ben Lapides. Yep. Okay, good, thank you. I'm Gabe with Change Tennessee, and I'll be the moderator tonight. This forum will run for about 6:30, minute and a half, but we're pretty on time. From 6:30 to 7:30, the candidates will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their background. We'll then move into questions that were submitted by email and some general questions based on topics relevant to the office they are running for. If we have time, we'll take a question submitted via the comments or messenger. Both candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer each question. We'll alternate who answers first, starting with the winner of our coin toss earlier, Kevin. And after the Q&A, the candidates will have 3 minutes of closing remarks. And so with that, we'll go to the first question. So Kevin, we'll start with you. Tell us about yourself, your background, and why you decided to run.
All right. Well, how's it going, guys? My name is Kevin Jenkins. I've been a resident in Tennessee for about the last 4.5 years now. And I decided to run as I've noticed that, as I'm pretty sure you all have, currently the government and specifically the House is very divided right now. Probably one of the most divisive houses inside of all of history. They can't seem to come to agreement with anything. And then you have our current representative, Diana Harshbarger, inside of there, who I've also noticed, while she preaches one thing, she's not exactly following the voice of the majority of the people, which is obviously her job. And I'm not exactly one to just sit idly by while nothing is being done. I'm a very proactive person. So I decided to throw myself into the ring to help everybody else out, bring everybody's voices here. I've been in here with the working man, been in here, met with the higher class, the lower class. I'm very well rounded. So I want to help you guys out, make your voices heard, and make the house a little less divided.
Same question about yourself and your background, and why you decided to run.
Sure. So thanks. My name is Ben Lapides. I was born and raised here in Tennessee. Lived in Gatlinburg for most of my life until I went off to college. Then came back after I was done. I graduated in 2020 from Warren Wilson College over in Western North Carolina, so I didn't go far. I'm an Eagle Scout. In my day job, I work for the Boys and Girls Club of Smoky Mountains. I am the technology director there. I work IT for the Survival Club and for the other clubs in the surrounding area. And why I decided to run, honestly, I ran in the 2020 election for the State House, and I genuinely didn't think that I was going to do this again in my 20s. But working at the Boys and Girls Club, working with my club kids has given me such a front seat to so many of the issues that are facing our community and facing our kids. And I genuinely do not know that I could keep looking my club kids in the eyes if I didn't know that I was doing everything I could to make sure that they have a future to grow up in. Thank you.
Now I'll move into the questions that were submitted. And this first is a question from Lorena G. Childcare costs are an enormous strain on our Tennessee families. The lack of affordable childcare is a barrier to parents entering the workforce. How will you make sure high-quality childcare is available for all Tennessee families that need it? And with the alternative questions, we'll now go back to Bennett for the first one.
Sure. Thanks. So I think that one of the best things actually that Biden did when he came into office was expanding the child tax credit. We need to re-expand the child tax credit. It took what was a tax credit that people got back when they filed their taxes and turned it into monthly payments. This put money in people's pockets so they could buy food for their kids. This program was so successful that it cut childhood poverty in half in this country within a year. We need to re-expand this program and we need to bring it back.
Thank you. And Kevin, question to you.
All right. Well, Ben and I tend to agree on a lot of things here. So, as I would also say, I would expand the child tax credits. As I've noticed a lot around here, especially inside of like the smaller towns, you have a lot of single, adult families around here. 1 or 2 children. You only have one parent who's unable to take care of themselves, whether they have 1 or 2 jobs. And to help with that, I would either say that we should increase the affordable wage for single parents. You know, we could increase SNAP programs, but anything to just help alleviate some of the other benefits. I do personally believe that we should make like preschool, you know, like child education and whatnot, just slightly more affordable for single parents, if not, you know, lower income families. That way, it takes a little less burden off of them without having to worry about their children's future. So.
Thank you, Kevin. Now, we'll move on to the second question, a question from Carol F. How will you protect Social Security and Medicare? I've paid into these programs for my entire working life, more than 50 years. I deeply resent that some lawmakers think it's a handout. It's my money, and now that I'm retired, I expect it to be there. And now, Kevin, you'll answer this one. So, to repeat the actual questions, how will you protect Social Security and Medicare?
So, Social Security and Medicare, we need to protect those. As I have been told growing up my entire life, it's probably not even going to be there when I reach retirement age, which is absolutely unacceptable. All of us have worked hard our entire lives. All of our money has gone into this thing. We need to ensure, and you know, I believe that we need to either make more acts that would personally secure Social Security or Medicare, makes it more affordable for more citizens around the United States. It just makes it a better option that people can reach forward to. That way, people want to invest inside of it, and then we don't have lawmakers trying to say that it's just a handout, it's more pointless. So I would personally, inside of Congress, write bills that would sorry about that. I'm not feeling the best. I would write bills that would, you know, kind of list down what is being involved inside of the Medicare and what is being given to the citizens. That way, they don't feel necessarily like it's a handout, as I've seen with a lot of people in Tennessee. They're not exactly the most receptive to just being given things, especially the Republicans. So to make it feel more like they've worked for it and show them that, hey, this is for your benefit as well. It's not just the government giving out free stuff to everybody. This is what they have all worked for their entire lives. They have earned this, they deserve this, and you know, make it a better thing for all of us.
Thank you, Kevin. Bennett, a question to you. So how will you protect Social Security and Medicare?
Sure. So I think protecting is the least of what we can do. These programs have been immensely successful since they were implemented as part of the New Deal and expanded upon since then. I think we need to expand Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. We need to continue to allow Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate with pharmacy companies directly to lower drug costs. We need to expand Social Security and Medicare benefits that help our seniors access meals they need, and just these things keep so many of our seniors who have worked their entire lives from living in poverty. And in the richest country in the history of the world, no one should live in poverty.
Thank you. So then this next question will go straight back to you. So this is a question from Leslie B. With the massive amounts of corruption from hedge funds and manipulation in the stock market, do you support the CAT, the Consolidated Audit Trail system being implemented? For those who are familiar with the CAT, myself included, the system enables auditors to track order and trading activity throughout the U.S. and the stock market listed for all equities and orders. Why or why not do you support the Consolidated Audit Trail?
Sure. So I would support that. I think that basically what that sounds like that does is that adds more transparency to the system. We need more transparency. I think what a lot of people don't realize is part of what has made our stock market go so erratic in the past few decades was genuinely the introduction of computer trading. They had to, at a point, write in rules that computers could only make so many trades per second, because who knows what you could actually do to the system if you have enough resources and a computer program to just buy and sell shares instantly. Not knowing enough about that program myself to comment on it really further, I do think that that is something that would provide more transparency and accountability to the system.
Thank you. And Kevin, so to you now, why not would you support the consolidated audit trail?
All right, I would also support the consolidated audit trail. One of my platforms is transparency inside of the government. And I do believe that the people have the right to kind of be able to follow the paper trail for, terms. To be able to follow a paper trail and kind of be able to see where everything's coming from, where everything's going. Like Ben said, with the automation of computers, it's constantly being updated. New regulations have to be applied every now and again, especially now with the higher tech computers, especially when it comes to things such as Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency and whatnot. We have to involve new regulations for all of those as well. And I think just having people be able to see what is going on inside the background would give them a bit more clarity and trust inside of the system.
Thank you. And so again, now we'll go right back to you. So it's another question from Leslie. With the last session in the House of Representatives being completely dysfunctional and the least productive in history, much like you said in your opening statements, how would you help remedy this?
So I would help remedy this. I like to think, for the most part, I am relatively a likable guy. But I am willing to work with people, whether I agree or disagree with exactly their views. The House is all about compromise. We don't always have to come up with 100% the right answer that's going to benefit one side or the other. We need to come up with the answer that's just going to move us forward sometimes. So whether that be specifically, I'm going to say with the abortion issues, we don't have to have abortions all the way up until pregnancy, whereas we don't have to have no abortions at all. We can always meet inside the middle, and I believe in almost every issue out there is a middle ground. It is able to be obtained. You just have to be able to talk to the people and reach that common ground.
And to Bennett, same thing. How would you help remedy the House being the most dysfunctional it's been?
Sure. So I think that part of the problem is that you have a lot of politicians on both sides that, like Kevin has said, have really abandoned compromise as a political idea. We have a lot of Congress people on both sides who I think are generally just there for views and clicks and likes. They're not there to actually legislate on issues. They're only there to fundraise and just make memes, I guess. But Congress is more important than that. We need compromise in our system to make it work, really. I think, I am a Democrat. I've grown up in this area my entire life. It's a very Republican area. I have many friends who are Republicans. I think that most people, Republican and Democrat, really do gravitate more towards the middle than what our Congress really represents right now. I think a major component of that actually is social media. I think just that has raised the temperature so much, and a lot of these representatives, like I said, are there for views and clicks, and they're using these algorithms that are mostly designed to infuriate you more and get you to elicit more emotional reactions so you engage with their product more. And I think we have too many politicians who are feeding into that system. So getting people back to the middle, finding a way to move forward together, because at the end of the day, all of us are on this ship of state together, and we are either going to swim or we will sink together.
Now these are group. The next few questions are ones that were submitted prior. So this next one is, what will or should our nation do over the long term to ensure healthcare access for all?
Sure. Well, I think basically we need to acknowledge that healthcare is a human right. We need to acknowledge that includes dental and vision. We need to not have a system that mostly is feeding into these middlemen that don't actually benefit the system. They're not helping the doctors fix anyone. These decisions really need to be made between patients and their doctors. We need to remove the middlemen in the system, both at pharmaceutical companies and at the insurance companies who are using our healthcare system for profit.
And then Kevin, to you. So will or should our nation do over the long term to ensure healthcare access?
All right. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know, prices around the country completely range for different hospitals and whatnot. And that also throws our entire system out of whack. The people have lost faith inside of the entire healthcare system. Some people feel like they are being disregarded because of their skin color, because of their gender, because of their sexuality. And I believe that these people need to be made more comfortable. There needs to be more work done, whether it be inside of the teaching of the medical facilities or just better equipment, to ensure that these people feel more safe, more comfortable, which will then allow the government to move in and but to then enable better healthcare programs that people would actually fall into rather than relying on privatized companies that just want you more or less for your profit.
Thank you. I will go right back to you on this next one. So, investigative reporting has disclosed inappropriate amounts of gifts to Supreme Court justices. Additionally, some justices have failed to recuse themselves from cases they clearly hold a bias or financial interest in. How do you plan to help address these ethical issues and make sure that we have a balanced, nonpartisan court?
So, I've actually thought about this quite a lot. Honestly, I do believe that we should create a new amendment inside of here that would allow us to either partially or fully remove judges that have become corrupt, as currently we have some that have taken so many bribes, so many gifts. They are just working for whoever pays them the most money at this point. They're not working for the people. They're hardly working for the government at all. And I think if they had a bit more accountability or realized that their position is not permanent, they would maybe take a bit more into accountability before they take these actions.
And now, to you, Bennett, how would you plan to address the ethical issues surrounding the courts and make sure that we have a balanced, nonpartisan justice system?
Sure, and so like you said, we've had a couple of justices who have gone to extremes with the gifts that they've taken. You have judges at the lower courts who have come out and condemned some of the Supreme Court justices who are not held to a code of ethics in the same way that every other judge in the country is. I do agree that we need to, Congress's job is to regulate the Supreme Court. Congress's job is also to decide the size of the Supreme Court. It hasn't been moved since 70 years ago, 80 years ago now, since I think FDR was the last one to actually try and add to the court. Originally, we had 5 Supreme Court justices back in Washington's day. I think it's plenty of time to move that number up. We should probably move it up in parity with the district court number. That would bring it to 13 justices. Immediately, you have the concern of, oh, does the president just appoint 4 justices? You can't do that because that unbalances the court. So when you're doing something like that, you have to probably stagger the seats, add 2 seats during one term, add the next 2 seats during the next presidential term. That way you're leaving it up to the American voters to decide who is putting people in those seats.
Thank you. Yeah. So this next question, we'll go right back to you, Bennett, and I'll open it to both of you. And so, do you know about Project 2025? And for anybody tuning in who may be unfamiliar with it, Project 2025 is the mandate for leadership for the Republican Party should Trump win the election. It's about installing the Republican agenda at everything from a local level all the way up to the federal level. So, are you familiar with it, and why not support it?
So I am familiar with it. If you're not familiar with it, definitely Google it. Google Project 2025. It is 900 pages, but there are plenty of media outlets at this point who have gone through it and given nice summaries if you do not have enough time to read the 900 pages. I definitely do not support it in any way. The president of the Heritage Foundation that put this out has just called for a second American Revolution and basically threatened to kill any left-leaning individuals who come out against it. The more you read about Project 2025, the more insane it gets. They want to institute the largest deportation effort in history. I don't think they really realize what that would look like, because that looks like local police officers coming into your churches, coming into your schools, and ripping children out of those communities and doing whatever with them. The whole idea is cruel and un-American. In education funding, they want to completely eliminate the Department of Education at a federal level, and they want to eliminate Title I funding. If you don't work in the education system or adjacent to the education system, you might not know that Title I funding is the funding that goes to schools and districts that have a majority, or not a majority, but at least 40% of their students qualify as low income. Getting rid of Title I funding would devastate every education system in Tennessee. There's no other way around it. It has insane portents for what the Republican Party wants to do to our civil rights. They basically plan to give the presidency dictatorial power, and we need to stop that. No man is above the law.
Thank you. Kevin, same question to you on Project 2025.
All right. As Ben has also said, Project 2025 is absolutely awful, which becomes even more frightening when you take into account that every Republican president, I believe since Reagan, has at least followed 60% of what the Heritage Foundation has laid out inside of part of their plans. So whether or not, if Trump were to become president, whether or not he implements all of it, we could guarantee, especially from his last presidency where he implemented 62% of what they suggested, we're probably looking at a very different America than what we have today. As I've seen inside of Project 2025, we have the mass deportation implementation. We have, I forgot exactly what it is, but it's where they go inside of the schools, people with low income, they will no longer receive free lunches. That is only going to even further affect the impoverished community around the United States, along with, as what Ben said, going inside with these schools that have 40% poverty rates. It's only going to hurt this country more than what I'm sure most of these people that are supporting it even realize. It's absolutely abysmal. I don't believe that anybody should have to deal with this, and we need to put a stop to it before it ever reaches its completion.
Thank you. So, and then we'll get right back to you, Kevin. So, what steps, if any, should be taken to curb gun violence in our communities?
So, gun violence inside of our communities is absolutely tragic. As I'm sure as residents of Tennessee, we've all seen, the reaction to gun violence from the governor himself by opening up gun laws instead of tightening them after a massive shooting, which is absolutely abysmal. I believe that we need to reinstate, red flag laws for people that are a harm to themselves or others. We need to do more thorough background checks, increase like training or whatnot, make people go through different types of classes, whether they want to obtain certain types of guns, get different safety lessons, and I believe, depending on the caliber, set age limits. It's not every 17-year-old needs to own some sort of rifle. Not every 14-year-old needs to own a pistol. While it is every American's right to own a gun, we need to put limitations on it to ensure that our children are safe, first off. We can't have all of these school shootings. We can't have all of these mass club violence. We need to put an end to it. We need to start by regulating how people get these guns, who gets these guns, and training people on the dangers and, the importance on safety for these deadly weapons.
Thank you. Now, Bennett, so to you, what steps, if any, should be taken to curb gun violence in our communities?
Sure. So I want to preface this by saying that I'm nearly a lifelong gun owner, because you don't give a baby a gun. But what we face in this country is an epidemic of shootings in our schools, and what should be considered our safe places in our communities. I fully support common sense gun reforms. We need red flag laws. We need a system in place to make sure that people who are a threat to themselves and others do not have access to these firearms, do not have the ability to purchase these firearms, that they have to go through waiting periods at a bare minimum. The Second Amendment is very clear that it calls for a well-regulated militia. It does not say that you cannot regulate anything about guns forever. I do remember being in high school, and we were lucky enough that it didn't happen, but I was a teacher's aide at the time, and I remember being whispered to in the ear by the teacher that she wanted me to close the blinds and basically shutter the room and do it without alerting anybody, because an active threat had been called into the county system and they weren't sure what school it was going to. Luckily, the Sevier County Sheriff's Office did a great job. That person never made it to a school that day. But as I was sitting in what was a portable trailer being used as a classroom at Gallenberg Pittman, I knew very clearly that we had really nothing to protect us there. We can build schools that are safe without making schools that look like prisons. Thank you.
So now, again, talking about steps for reformation, what steps, if any, should our nation take to reform current immigration policies, especially regarding Dreamers and DACA?
Sure, so we need comprehensive immigration reform. We've needed it for a long time. For too long, it's been political football that has affected too many people's lives. Our immigration system, I had a friend whose parents actually just moved to this country, but they were in line for 9 years. And that's insane. Like, we can't ask someone to wait a decade of their life in waiting to get in. Because of the way our quota system is set up, because of the ways we have just certain aspects of our immigration system, it needs comprehensive reform. We need to secure our southern border, but we can do that in a humane way that does not lead to people dying. On the note about the Dreamers are Americans, and they need to be protected as Americans that they are. Any insinuation that the people who've grown up in this country are not Americans is offensive.
Thank you. And as Mr. Kevin, I realized, big egg on my face, I did not give him an opportunity to answer the gun violence question, so my apologies. So Kevin, you're going to take 2 in a row now. So what steps, if any, should be taken to curb gun violence in our communities?
All right.
He
answered.
You did.
Did really good at school taking notes. So,
I was gonna say, as soon as you said that, just instantly.
I was not a Dean's List student. So what steps, if any, should our nation take to reform current immigration policies, especially regarding DACA and the Dreamers?
All right. So, as I work here at Sevierville, I talk to a lot of people every day, and it seems that one thing I do tend to hear a lot is that people are concerned about immigration and about all these migrants moving into the country. As we saw all the way back in, I believe it was May, when the first bill was being formed, the bipartisan bill, and then ultimately it was shut down. I did agree with it. However, we do need to, if we are going to insecure our borders, quote unquote, while I don't believe we need to limit everybody from coming in here and close down the borders, I do believe we should streamline the process and make it easier, hire more agents for the borders, upgrade their equipment, give more ports of access, and have more medical teams, because as we've seen along the border, one of the biggest issues is that there are a lot of people dying because they're trying to cross over in different ports or cross over these rivers where we put barbed wire and whatnot, and it's absolutely just slaughtering these people, women, children. And we also need to change the perception that Donald Trump has kind of instilled inside of a lot of people, that it is a terrorist and rapists and drug addicts that are coming through the border, where most of these people, I believe, I looked it up. It's something about like, I would want to say 60%, or at least higher education graduates and whatnot. These are just regular people like you and me, just trying to make a life for themselves, coming from countries that were overrun and they have fallen on their luck. We need to welcome these people in, because that is what America has been since its foundation, honestly.
And now you can do whatever. What should the federal government do, if anything, to provide an equitable, quality public education for all children, pre-K through grade 12?
All right. So I believe that the same way it was kind of thrown. It was kind of thrown in. I believe we need to do things such as increase funding for schools. When I used to live in South Dakota before this, you could look at the year-to-year budget plan for the governor, and I believe in 2019 we had received $3 million inside of that state, and only about $30,000 of it went towards every school inside of the state to increase their books, to like modernize their books, modernize their electronics. That is not enough to go around. We need to get rid of school vouchers. I know Tennessee does not exactly have them, but other states are implementing them, have considered implementing them. We need to get rid of school vouchers. We need to increase more funding for these public schools to update their curriculums, give them better books, especially inside of a lot of these urban areas with more minority students. I know, especially in like states like New York and whatnot, there is a disparity between private schools having higher, more modernized books, more modernized computers and electronics versus their urban schools, which are more or less left with the scraps that are from like 20 or 30 years ago. We need to upgrade and keep everybody in the same playing field so everybody has an equal opportunity as they grow up.
Thank you. Now, then to you, what should the federal government do, if anything, to provide an equitable, quality education for all children, pre-K through grade 12?
Sure. So there's a number of things we can do. We need to implement universal school lunch. We should just feed children. Studies have shown that it makes them do better on their test scores, they learn better. I've never really understood why that's been an argument. But we need to feed our children. We need to pay teachers a living wage. We need to make it to where teachers are no longer buying their own school supplies out of their own money. We need to impose these public voucher systems. The Tennessee state government, luckily, decided not to do it this term, but by all accounts, it does seem that they're going to try and re-implement this voucher program next year in the Tennessee session. I do think that the voucher program is going to become a national fight, unfortunately, and we can see in places like Arizona and Michigan that have already passed it, how detrimental it really is, and how few students these systems are actually helping. It really is just another tax cut for the wealthy. So I'm fully opposed to these voucher systems. Yeah, thank you.
And I'll come right back. So 2024 could outrank 2023 as the hottest year since records began. NOAA predicts above normal Atlantic hurricane season, which we've already seen now with Beryl hitting Texas. How do you hope to address climate change and/or protect our environment?
Sure. So I was very lucky to grow up as a Boy Scout here in Sevier County at the doorstep of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. We have the national park in our district. We have a few national forests in our district. Those places need to be preserved, and we need to enact and vote for legislation that will address the climate crisis with the urgency it needs. The climate crisis is the urgent issue of the next 10 years. It impacts every other issue on the planet. It makes wars worse. It makes refugee crises worse. It makes everything, food production, it affects every aspect of our lives. None of this matters on a burnout planet. We have to do everything we can to ensure that our climate is safe and livable and breathable for the next generation and the one after that.
Thank you, and to you, Kevin. So, how do you hope to address climate change and/or protect our environment?
All right. unlike Project 2025, I don't believe we should drill. So, as Ben was saying, climate change is probably the worst disaster that humanity is facing right now. As I believe some records have said that possibly by 2050, all the way from upper Louisiana, or from upper Louisiana down the rest of the United States could actually become uninhabitable because it is so hot. That is only going to decrease our food supply. That's going to decrease our water. If it happens like that all around the world, everywhere lower than that, including the equator, that's going to cause mass migration, which is just going to be a bigger problem than this. It's going to throw our economy out of whack. But we do have companies around the United States, and there are some subsidies for some of these companies that are doing climate, helping climate change, such as like carbon capture. Some companies, I forgot what one is called, carbon something. But they are inside of urban areas and whatnot where they do post these little satellites, for lack of a better term, that captures the carbon that's within the air. It doesn't exactly get rid of it, but it keeps it from going up, creating a greenhouse effect. And I believe at that point, it's better to have it like that. And the more money that we invest inside of these technologies that would capture carbon or nuclear energy or whatnot, the more safe, the more affordable, the easier that they're going to become, and the better on we'll be able to move away from fossil fuels and other damaging fuel sources.
And now we'll move on to our last question, which you'll start with, Kevin. So in building a vibrant U.S. economy, would you emphasize reforming tax policies, addressing income inequality, or something else? A bit of an open-ended there.
Yeah. All right. So I believe you said.
Not the last question anymore.
All right. So I believe you said reforming policies addressing income equality. So I do believe income equality is probably one of the more important issues that we should address inside of the United States. So currently we have corporations, especially after the pandemic, price gouging prices to try and make up for what they had lost during those years of the pandemic, which is absolutely putting a strain on the American people, where, counter to inflation, our price or our income hasn't grown in about 30 years or so, but our prices keep on getting bigger. This is just going to make things worse for the average person. I believe that we need to increase our wages to a more appropriate scale to keep people on pace. We need to battle drug epidemics. That is a lot of money that is coming in and out of the United States government through gangs and smuggling drugs in and out of the country. And you also have billions of dollars being lost annually from technology that is being stolen by foreign adversaries that could be inside of the United States government, which then could help build jobs for people. Could help build jobs for people and afford a better life for all Americans.
Thank you. And then the open-ended is to you. In building a vibrant U.S. economy, what would you emphasize? Reforming tax policies, addressing income inequality, or something else?
That is very open-ended. I think that probably the most important thing that we need to deal with is addressing income inequality, but at the same time, I think that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and we can deal with both of those things, we can have a fair tax system that leads to reducing income inequality, very basically. Like, those issues seem very interconnected to me. I think in Sevier County, we have one of the largest gaps there. I think a large part of that is that Tennessee does not have a minimum wage law. We just go along with what the federal minimum wage law is. We need to increase that. There's nowhere in the country that you can afford a place to live on $7.25 an hour at working 40 hours a week. It is supposed to be, when it was originally implemented, the minimum wage was supposed to be a wage that you could support a spouse and children on, and you'd be the only worker in the house. At this point, parents are having to work 2 jobs each just to survive. And we need to fix that and we need to raise the minimum wage to a point where we can give people their lives back.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the bonus questions. So, and so we've got over and back with you, Ben, on these. So, given the rise of Christian nationalism, could you give us your comments on the separation of church and state?
Sure. So I do believe that church and state should be separate. This nation was founded on a separation of church and state. Most of the founding fathers were deists, even. They were not Christians in the most traditional form that most Christians think of it today. Jefferson had a Quran that is still in possession of the Smithsonian. I think the founding fathers were much more open to religious liberty than many are today. It was one of the founding principles of this country. It was why the Pilgrims left England and came to the United States in the first place. We need to tolerate people of all religions who come from all walks of life in this country like we have.
Thank you. And do you have your comments on the separation of church and state?
I believe the separation of church and state is very important. As we have seen, Louisiana, I believe their governor has stated they have Bibles inside of every classroom, or they have the 10 Commandments inside of every classroom, and that is absolutely not right. As a country that I was grown up being told was the melting pot of the world, we have people of Muslim beliefs, we have people of Hindu, Shia beliefs, and we do not need to intertwine our government inside of any one religion. As we have seen around the world, that building on a theocratic government has a lot of different issues that I don't believe, as we've seen with like the rise of Christian nationalism inside of this country, with people like Greg Locke who are calling for the abolition of the separation between church and state. I don't believe they have clearly thought through the implications that come along with it, and the damage that will be done to the psyche, to the complete form of the United States. It would completely change what we are as a country. People would no longer feel like this is a place that they can go to call home, away from home, or to make a better life for themselves, or to feel welcome. We need to keep it as a different entity all on itself. That way we can have a clear mind and work for all of the people instead of just one particular kind of person.
So we should have time for one more question here. So
Do the last one.
no, exactly the same page. So we'll go to you on this, Kevin. So what will you do to protect women's and LGBTQ plus rights?
Well, the first thing I would love to do is to vote to reinstate Roe v. Wade. I do believe what Trump has said, to leave it up to the states, it sounds good in theory, but overall in practice, it's never exactly been in the best interest of the people. You have Republicans over the country that are calling for monitoring women's pregnancies or monitoring their periods, and it is an invasion of their privacy. It is an invasion of their American rights, of their human rights even. We need to reinstall Roe v. Wade. We need to remove all this stigma from hospitals and whatnot that, women's issues aren't taken as seriously. For trans people, we need to make it more accepted, more acknowledged that they too have problems inside of the medical field that they need help with. We can't just throw these people to the side and say that they're second-class citizens inside of our first-class country. It just doesn't make any sense.
Thank you. And Bennett, to you. So, what will you do to protect women's and the LGBTQ plus community's rights?
Sure. So obviously we need to restore Roe v. Wade. That was the law of the land for over 40 years. A couple generations of women, that's all they've known in their entire lifetimes in America, actually. Like Kevin said, I really don't think that leaving it up to the states is a good idea. That creates new dystopian horrors like abortion tourism as a very concept. We need to pass the ERA. We need to pass anti-discrimination laws for the LGBTQ community. One of the ways, if you look at history, the way that the federal government finally desegregated hospitals was basically conditioning the federal money on making sure that patients had to be treated equally. I think that if it comes to it, obviously the federal government needs to start conditioning federal money. As you have politicians in Tennessee talking about rejecting Tennessee education funding that would adversely affect low-income students and would adversely affect special needs students in classes across the country, I don't see why any state should have the right to supersede the American government about what the American government says the American people deserve and what their rights are. No state should have the power to try and overwrite that. I think if we pass the Equal Rights Amendment, if we restore Roe v. Wade, if we can pass comprehensive LGBTQ anti-discrimination laws, if we can codify Obergefell v. Hodges and codify same-sex marriage to ensure that what's happened to Roe v. Wade can't happen to Roe v. Wade again and can't happen to Obergefell v. Hodges. If we can do these things, then we can hopefully try and restore a bit of trust in our government.
Thank you. So now, kind of as the clock ticks away as we get to this close, we'll give each of you 3 minutes for closing remarks. And in keeping with faith of flip-flopping back and forth, and since you got to open it, we'll go back to Bennett for closing remarks.
Sure. Well, first off, I'd like to thank everyone who came out tonight in person and everyone who's watching on the live stream. Democracy does die in darkness, and the only way that we continue to have a country is for people to remain involved and remain engaged. Doing things like this are a great way to do that. I'm running in East Tennessee as an East Tennessean to try and represent East Tennessee values in Congress and to try and restore some amount of sanity back to our country. We need to address the climate crisis. We need to ensure that healthcare access is available to all. We need to protect our education system. We need to restore Roe v. Wade. We need to codify Obergefell v. Hodges. And we need to do everything we can to ensure that every American can live their life how they choose to, freely, as the rights they were given by our Constitution and our Bill of Rights say they should. If you'd like to help and support, go to BennettLapides.com. Check us out on social media. We're everywhere at Facebook or Twitter or Instagram at Bennett4TN. Check us out, drop us a line if you want to get in touch, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. And Kevin, to you, closing remarks.
All right. And as Bennett has said, we are in a very dangerous time in our democracy. Everybody you either have people that have completely given up on our government, or they are too scared to really reach out. And I believe that now is the most important time. So first off, thank all of you guys for being here and being so connected inside of the community and inside of the politics. But we need to reach out to not only just this small circle inside of this room, but reach out to your family, your friends, encourage them to vote, tell them about the dangers of what is happening, what could happen to our democracy. We need to protect the civil rights of everybody inside of this country. We need to ensure that this country is still a safe place and seen as a safe haven inside of this world. We need to make sure that people are able to get by, not having to work 5 different jobs and never see their families. We need to make sure the kids are able to get a proper education and are not just left to fend for themselves. We need to make sure that our environment is clean and safe. We don't want to end up like China, where I'm not sure if you guys have ever looked, but their air index has reached the 400s. Around here, ours, I don't think I've seen it reach past 48. I do not want to live in America where we can't breathe, where our lungs are filled with soot and carbon and an awful environment. I do believe we need to fight for our justices. We need to fight for America and fight for our democracy. Thank you all. You can find me on Facebook on Vote Kevin Jenkins. My website is votekevinjenkins.org. I believe my Instagram is also Vote Kevin Jenkins. I would appreciate if you all left a like, followed my page, donated to the campaign. I would not complain. But again, thank you all for coming out tonight. If you have any questions afterwards, we'll gladly answer them for you guys. Thank you.
I want to thank both of you gentlemen for joining us tonight. And another thank you to Autumn and the Sevier County Democratic Party for putting this on and putting together the live stream for everybody. Thank you everyone here and who are tuning in as Bennett and Kevin both mentioned. We have to bring this awareness to people to get engaged, to get out the vote efforts. Funny enough, Tennessee ranks 51st in the nation in voter turnout. We rank better or worse, depending on how you want to look at it, as areas that don't even have federal representation. And we're going to beat that by having folks run. For so often, especially in rural communities, we haven't had people running for office. And now, all of a sudden, not only do we have people running for office, you have two great candidates running in a contested primary. We additionally have great candidates running at the state and local level as well. Here in the audience, we've got one of our state candidates, Leslie Braddock, joining us. So that's what it takes, up and down the ballot, all across Tennessee, all across the country, to move us forward and to get us to where we need to be, to stop things like Project 2025, to stop this rise of Christian nationalism, and to protect our rights as Americans. So again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and for joining us, and have a great evening.